peak baggers, I think is what we've been referring to them as this entire time, outdoor recreators.
It'll shock you how much little stuff you can pick up through, again, forums, blogs, social media groups, vlogs, YouTube, etc.
But I didn't know that leaf liquor was a thing, and that's the first time I've ever heard it in my life.
Welcome to the Built to Hunt podcast, brought to you by the team of hunt advisors at the Huntin magazine, where we are dedicated to helping our members go on more hunts with better information. Join Huntin today at huntinfool.com.
Welcome back to another Built to Hunt podcast. I'm Stanton Upson, and I'm joined today with Jared Lyle and Garth Jensen. Today we're going to maybe take a different approach than most to e-scouting, the unorthodox version, if you will. These two gentlemen that are with me are both very busy individuals who are also very connected and usually to their chair. So it gives them some time to...
Ouch. Yeah, I feel like I thought that was going a different direction there.
Hey, you guys are both visual. You're always here in the office.
You're going to call me out to like a waterhole hunter only too?
Well,
He's very connected to his tripod chair at the waterhole.
I was going to continue that and say it has made you both very good at scouting and researching your tags that you've drawn or your hunts that you have coming up in different ways. That's where I was going with it.
It's a decent save.
Yeah,
that's not a great
decent save.
Yeah,
I mean, you know.
Like it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Stan. I think what you're really trying to say, if I may be so bold, is that when the busier we get as humans, the harder our time is to come by when we spend that precious time out in the field. And so I, and everybody in our office does this, we all do this, have learned to, when it comes to e-scouting in particular, you mentioned the word unorthodox. I have learned more about a recent sheep tag that I drew through YouTube channels that have nothing to do with hunting than I'll probably ever learn by trying to chase hunts that have been filmed and or recorded in the unit that I drew here in Utah. So, yeah, unorthodox. We're talking YouTube. We're talking peak baggers, mountain bikers, wingsuit jumpers,
wingsuit.
Sure. I wouldn't rule that out.
There's no way. I've seen how fast them son of a guns go. There's no way they're scouting anything from that
I'm just
speed.
saying, getting up to the place they jump off, they probably cover a lot of creative spaces that could have elk, deer, sheep, goats, you name it.
That's fair.
Horse groups, jeepers as in people who drive Jeeps out and rock crawl, right? Mm-hmm. But no, the point is that there's a lot of people doing outdoor recreation. There's never been an easier time in our lives to share that in a bunch of formats, from social media to YouTube, you name it. And those resources, although unorthodox as it relates to hunting, have been some of my most treasured resources as of late.
And realistically, what I would say is those types of e-scouting, at least the types of resources you're describing, I use those, but it's not necessarily to like pinpoint locations and, hey, this is where you got to go to glass for deer over here, and this is where, you know, and usually when people are thinking about scouting, that's what they're thinking more inside the box.
That's true.
Like direct correlation to their actual hunt. And the Facebook groups, like, when you're talking about, like, you know, there might be some type of Facebook group over in some wilderness that you have a tag for, and there's a horseman association.
Yep.
If you follow that, there's going to be a pretty good chance they're going to tell you when those trails are open, what trails aren't open, like how to get around up in here, the best place to navigate if you want to get to this park or this area right here, which trail you need to come in on.
How much traffic they ran into while they were in there, etc.
Maybe you might get into a cleanup group of that wilderness area and go in with some experienced guys in that area to learn the trail system.
Yep.
You know, you never know.
No, that's true. There's just so much outdoor recreation going on. And to your point, Garth, one of the things we've seen in the West here in recent years terribly is obviously wildfire and beetle kill. And in both cases, it can destroy entire trail systems, hundreds and hundreds of miles, particularly in the wilderness areas where, you know, the average person can't carry a chainsaw. For those of you listening that don't realize this, if you're in a wilderness area, don't get caught running your chainsaw because it's not legal. And so a lot of places that are in national forests, BLM, state ground, you'll find independent operators, outfitters, just people like us that'll actually kind of clear trails out here and there. But you go into a wilderness area, it's got to be carefully contracted and scrutinized, and that's where they also can't fight forest fires in there. So these forest fires go in and ravage hundreds of thousands of acres. You got downfall coming across the trails. It could be a real mess. And so those are the places like what you were saying, Garth. It's not I'm looking for where can I go glass up a big buck. It's
Right.
more like, is this trail even open?
Yep.
Or am I going to go in there and am I going to be crawling over deadfall for 17 hours straight before I finally give up and say this trail is no good?
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's so many different avenues to go to find access, other than just a map. And a lot of time Forest Service maps won't even be updated.
No.
It's so I've found that when you call a Forest Service district and you're trying to find out, like on these big wildfires that have blown through some of these states, they'll close that entire place down. Like in Colorado, there was full-on closures. Like you couldn't even enter that area of that wildfire, and you would not even get an answer into the next summer.
Yep.
Like, well, we've got to maintain this. We've got to watch for any type of flood damage. If we get some heavy rainfall, it could close it again. We don't want to risk somebody getting in there. And you can't get any information of them because they don't want to be liable, too, if they say, oh, yeah, but you can find out that information by going through some of these recreational, hiking websites or just even if you just get in and log in some of that stuff like just Google Maps and you see, okay, well, yeah, this guy just snapped a photo and posted a photo onto that. Like he was right here. Now all of a sudden you've got, that he made it in there somehow. Well,
Yep.
he just didn't cross country across that thing. You know what I mean? So there is some type of access where you can pick that stuff up.
Right. Garth, you mentioned mountain bikers in specific. You mentioned that you get a lot more detail sometimes out of their trail maps, etc. Enlighten us a little bit more about that.
So you can. So that's what I did on a hunt that I had over in Colorado. I downloaded a mountain bike app, and not necessarily specifically. I didn't download it for that hunt, but what I did is I downloaded an app for mountain bike trails in and around here, just so I could take off and go on a mountain bike trail if I wanted to with my family. But then I started looking at all these trails, and I'm like, man, these trails aren't even existing on some of the mapping platforms I have. Like, I don't even know how these are monitored. Well, another hunt that I had over in Colorado, I just kind of pulled that up just to see. Man, there was little mountain bike trails that were like 2 miles here, 1.5 miles here, 13 miles here, that were dropping me all the way down into some of these canyons. I had no idea. Like, even on the Ponsagon over there, when I had that tag, it didn't say a mountain bike trail, but when you pulled up that app, there was a full-on mountain bike trail that took you all the way down in behind a bunch of private. It's like there was an entrance and an exit, and all I had to do was go down through there on my mountain bike versus hoofing it down through there, which saved me a ton of time.
Right.
But you'd have never found that if you were just looking at your traditional mapping platforms.
Your MVUM, motor vehicle use map.
Yep.
That's deliberately designed to sort of restrict your access.
Yeah.
Like it's really trying to keep you inside of a channel, right?
Yeah.
To that point, you've got states, there's a lot of states that have a lot of motorized trail access. And you can use an e-bike on those legally. You can use your dirt bike. Sometimes it's under 50-inch, side-by-sides or ATVs. And a lot of the maps, it's difficult to find all that stuff on. And in some ways, like as a hunter, I'm not going to come out and necessarily jump on a blog or a forum and say, hey, guys, I use this awesome trail to access and go kill this bull, right? But the peak baggers, the ATVers, all those people, they don't have the same secrets they do. They want everybody to kind of go join the movement, if you will, or go have a good time. So that's why I think sometimes you get so much more data out of these other types of outdoor recreationists because they don't have the same secrets that hunters are trying to keep.
What do you
What
think,
about
Stan?
you, Stan? You got some secrets?
Big secrets. I don't know what to say to that.
We both asked you the same question.
Well, what I would say is, like, I've just found that, for instance, especially when it comes, like, you're talking peak baggers, a lot of these guys that draw your sheep hunts and your goat hunts or things like that, when they start looking at different trails into canyons to access those canyons, there's probably a lot of trails that those guys just built over time to get into those canyons or get up to that peak, just to access that. Well, for them, they just wanted to stake their claim at the top of that and say, I was at the top, like I summited.
Yep.
But for someone that has a sheep tag, they're like, damn, well, now I got to stretch. I can get up there on that peak and I can glass down the other side. Whereas if I was trying to get to that canyon, I would have had to come all the way around and hopscotch over canyon by canyon just to see what that is. And now these fine gentlemen and gentlewomen just carved out a trail for me so I could get up there. And they don't care, like you said.
It. Yeah. In fact, if anything, they're proudly sharing it as opposed to sort of timidly hiding it like hunters tend to do. Yeah. Blogs and vlogs are one of my favorite ways to look at this kind of stuff too. A lot of times there's, I follow a host of bloggers that they get to spend 200 days a year out in the field or more. Like, these people are tougher than I've ever thought of being. Like, they literally live in a tent. And sometimes I look at their tents and I'm like, I wonder if they know there's like newer technology, but they're tougher than me, right? So they're out there just stammering around in the woods, and they'll go to cool places that oftentimes I want to have a tag for. Like, one of them in particular, I subscribe to a guy on YouTube that is a complete non-hunter. I wouldn't say anti-hunter because he's very kind to hunters alike when he's in the woods. You see some interaction, but he films all his own stuff. He goes on these 3 to 10, 12, 14-day backpacking trips solo, films it all, and then each night he'll kind of give a little summary of the day, and then the morning, etc. And a lot of times he'll be like, hey, I'm right here on the map. Literally will show me on the Forest Service map where he's at, and be like, hey, I woke up at 3 a.m. and there were bull elk bugling all around me. I'm like, jackpot, Yeah. Like, he literally, because he doesn't care. Again, he is sharing with you his vlog, if you will, through YouTube. Primarily is the way I watch most of those vlog styles. But he's just sharing with you his experience in the woods. And then I, as a hunter, go, hey, there are elk there at least at some point in time, because he'll tell you the day he's there, the time he's there, show you on the map, etc. And again, he's not trying to give away hunting spots, but it's pretty interesting.
I've been known to be our local YouTube watcher.
All right.
Been told. But, there's a lot of times that, you can be watching a YouTube video, pictures, kill photos people post on Instagram and stuff, social media wise. But, even if it's like a general area or, the same type of season, a high country, looking in the background, the type of foods, not necessarily specific peaks, even though you can kind of hone that down depending on how much your vlogger decides to give up. But, there's a lot of things that I think we overlook in pictures and get too focused on, like, where's that very specific peak in Colorado that I'm going to go try to hunt that same exact basin, instead of it's like, these are the types of forages, this is the type of time of year it was, these are the types of things that are around that could potentially lead you into not only a good area for that specific unit where that hunter was, or that, backpacker was hiking past, a bunch of deer in a basin, but more or less like, okay, there's similar areas in my unit that I'm going to that I can visually see on YouTube or on Onyx Maps or social, or when I'm researching my hunt area, it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, deer like to live up here in this time of year, or forage on this type of food in winter, or whatever it is. I think there's bigger items we can pull from these pictures or YouTube videos too.
That's a great point. Like, I know I've watched a ton of born and raised videos, and when I'm watching those, what I'm trying to get out of those is like, okay, I know they were in Wyoming,
right?
I know during these dates, because it says, we're hunting this date and this date, the activity level of those animals, or the elk when they're in there, well, it seems like they were fairly hot, during this section of time, like during the 9th to the 15th, and I know that can change from year to year, but at least it gives you somewhat of a baseline of, hey, and I'm a terrible caller, right? So when I'm in there, I'm listening to what they're saying, when they're saying it. If I have a Wyoming tag coming up, albeit it might not even be in the same area or, even close to where they're at, but at least I have a little baseline and saying, well, it seemed like they were talking pretty good. It seemed like the elk were over there, were fairly responsive, to this call or this call. I'll use that too, like say, just to get a baseline, like you're saying, of what those animals are doing during that particular time frame.
Yeah, you're basically reading between the lines. I think that's what we're really coming back to not that we're quite ready to wrap this up, but full circle, our time is super valuable. It's super limited. We have a little bit more time. If you really add up how many hours a day you kind of waste between social and other things like that, and if instead you say, well, I'm still going to kind of entertain myself doing these things, but I'm going to entertain myself in a way that also educates, it'll shock you how much little stuff you can pick up through, again, forums, blogs, social media groups, vlogs, YouTube, etc., especially stuff that may not be. I'm going to use one specific example, Lake Powell. So we're 2.5 hours from Powell down here in southern Utah. My wife and I love to go down there. Lake Powell, as everybody knows, is in dire straits for drying up, too much drought. The National Park Service, of course, has a Lake Powell page that they update very infrequently. But if you belong to like a couple of Facebook groups, those people are out there every day. Every single day, you're getting real-time updates where the water levels are, what the boat launch situations are, what's navigable, what's not, what's changed, etc. And I know that that's a non-hunting example, but the point is it's exactly the same. You've got government agencies that are trying to kind of keep up with the times, beetle kills, forest fires, etc. And they're just not as incented as these sort of, I guess, crowdsourced pieces of information. Another good example, a few years ago, a giant boulder broke loose in the lower Main Salmon River, came rolling off the hill, and as if there's like almost no pack bridges for 20 miles either direction from Stoddard Bridge. That boulder smashed the bridge. The only access at that particular area where the middle fork of the Salmon comes in, completely nuked it, blew it out. And the point is like trying to find that information from a government website to maintain it was almost impossible. But there were constant updates through social blogs, etc. And it was a good place to go access certain types of hunts in particular. So those are the kind of pieces of information that you pick up on these sort of unorthodox e-scouting locations.
We as hunters too, sometimes, you constantly hear there's so much pressure. There's so many people hunting here. There's so much this, so much that.
Mm-hmm.
But, biasly, if a hunter sees someone on a ridge, even if it's across the canyon,
right,
glassing,
one person,
there was people everywhere too, right?
Yeah.
But these other peak baggers, I think is what we've been referring to them as this entire time. Outdoor recreators.
Yeah.
They have a different opinion also too, that maybe you run into a set of hikers at a trailhead, maybe they're coming down when you're going up. They might have a more open-minded, unbiased opinion of what they just came back through where you're heading to.
True. Having said that, if they actually run into what they deem to be a really crowded area, it's probably true, right?
Like
at
least Zion National Park.
Hiking the Narrows.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting point, Stan, is that on one hand, they're going to be a little bit more open to other outdoor recreationists out using it. But at the same time, if you hear from, whether it be groups or whatever else, that, hey, this trailhead is a zoo on September 15th, it probably really is a zoo. So,
well, most people, like I had a moose tag. I keep referring to Colorado because I think that's
Colorado's
the busiest
pretty
place
easy.
ever.
It is.
Yeah.
I think that's the main reason, like kind of what kicked off this podcast, though, if we're fair, is that it's probably got more mixed-use outdoor recreationalists than any other state, like at this point.
I went on a moose hunt over there with my wife that had a cow moose tag in October, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is black and white. There's not a deer hunt going on. There's not an elk hunt going on right now. Like, there's only this many bull moose tags and this many cow moose tags. Like, I'm going to be by myself. Lord help us. Like, all the locals, when I went to the gas station, I'm like, man, what's going on? Like, is there something in town? He's like, yeah, all the leaf lickers. So that's what they call them. He said,
Can
all
we
the
say
leaf
that
lickers,
on the podcast?
all the leaf lickers are in town. And I'm like, well, what is that? And like, all the people from Denver come up because the colors are changing. All these, like, all the colors are popping, right? The aspen leaves are turning yellow, and that stark contrast. And there's roads all over the place. And so it was a line of traffic to get up through there. Now, had I done a little bit of research in advance, I'd have been like, yeah, we're not going on the weekend.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that leaf licker was a thing. And that's the first time I've ever heard it in my life. And now I know what it is.
I love it. I think that's a great example. probably a way to start segueing out of this podcast. We're going to keep it fairly short, but remember that unorthodox scouting techniques can sometimes be your best friend. There's a ton of information out there. Never been easier to get information than it is today, which does lead me to one small asterisk, and that is when it comes to hunting groups, like Facebook groups that are dedicated to hunting, etc. Again, the natural tendency for hunters is to just, I'm going to say it, overreact to any pressure that they see out there. So use a little caution with that. I would give more credence to outdoor groups that are saying this was super crowded, etc. But plug into all of these resources.
Yeah, no, and what I was going to say too, to the unorthodox part, or that, like, thinking the outside of the box part of that too, all of these things that we've talked about, including, like tools with your, this is to your asking hunters part of this, right? All of these tools, including, Huntinful's member draw tool, Facebook forums, biologists, all of these tools and stuff that you use ahead of time to research. There's also a point in which when you are asking another hunter, maybe it is a tag that, your sheep tag that you'll probably never draw. You will not ever draw again.
Unless Utah changes.
There's a point too where people are willing to help others if you're willing to put forth the effort first. Like if you come straight out and say, I drew this tag and where do I go? There's probably a lot of people on a forum or a Facebook page that are going to blow past that. But, if you've put in some legwork and you have some maybe more specific areas or more specific questions about things, you might reach a little bit different spot or a different group of people that are more willing to help you on that.
It's an excellent point, and these unorthodox scouting methods can lead up to that, right? I think that's what you're saying, is that at the end of the day, if you pick up enough pieces of information here that you can show demonstrably to the person that you're talking to, that's like, hey, this Stan cares about this tag. He's investing time, energy, etc. They're way more likely to help you out in the hunting community in general. No, excellent point. Don't ignore these techniques when it comes time to go draw a tag, and also don't be afraid to reach out to people. YouTube is an open source format. Put a comment on the video. It's the easiest way to reach out to that individual that's posted the video and just be like, hey, I saw you were backpacking in the Dirty Devil. I got a couple questions about access. Do you mind connecting? Do it on Instagram. Do it on Facebook Messenger. Do it on YouTube. Like, don't be shy. But again, to stand to your point, do your research first. Do a bunch of this research, and that'll make everybody happier to talk to you, I think.
Yeah, and with the algorithm, this mysterious algorithm that so many are experts of that no one knows anything for, supposedly questions and conversations are supposed to help them. So they might look at you commenting on their videos, pictures, etc. as being a way to help them also, and might engage more people to join in on the thread.
It's a great point.
Yeah, and rejection's always easy when you're looking at it over your phone or the computer.
Yeah, I've been married 28 years. I know what no sounds like, right? All right, there you have it, folks. Unorthodox e-scouting. We appreciate any support we get for the podcast, subscriptions, comments, questions, etc. So hope you guys are having a great, we're just getting ready to head into summer here and hit this very topic very hard, each one of us, as we kind of finalize our hunt plan for the fall. So best of luck doing it. Hope we can help out. We always welcome you for a Huntinful membership as well, and we appreciate the listen.